good afternoon, everybody. It's been an exciting morning, yeah? No?
Good warm-up.
Lunch, right? Everybody's digesting. So my name is Amanda Iglesias. I am a HubSpotter, and if you want to tweet at me, there's my Twitter handle.
Amanda Lucia.
Yeah. And I'm joined by one of my all-time favorite customers. This is Julie Montgomery, right over here. Julie and I have been working together since March of 2011, back when I was a consultant. And I'm kind of in awe of Julie. You know, Julie is a one-person marketing team. And she's been able to accomplish a ton with the power of HubSpot, right? Her blog has logged in nearly 90,000 visitors. That's pretty impressive when you're talking about somebody who started with pretty much a...
No blog.
Yeah, no blog, right? She's grown her email contacts database to nearly 25,000 organic contacts, which, I mean, nothing makes me prouder than that.
You were my consultant.
I guess she probably cares about the part where maybe she's generated 300K worth of revenue from her HubSpot leads, which is awesome.
For us, it's great.
And I mean, that would be enough for some people, but we at HubSpot aspire to greater things, right? And what I love about the way Julie has positioned herself within her industry is that her prospects absolutely adore her, right? This is ripped straight from one of her blog comments. I did a little stalking when we were setting up
Make
this
sure it's not
presentation.
one I wrote. I didn't write that
No.
comment,
They love her,
Just kidding.
right? But we talk about what does it mean to love marketing? That sounds a little bizarre. Especially in the immortal words of Tina Turner, what has love got to do with this hot mess?
Yeah. Well, and I'll say thanks for all the kudos. I mean, I feel like I work hard for that, but I'm not sure love has anything to do with it.
Well,
what do you think?
Let's look at it.
Because basically, I send an email, somebody's either going to open it or they're going to delete it, right?
I mean, so this is the typical flow, right? Draft an email, send it to a group of people, it hits their inbox. A couple things are going to happen to it. Thing is, love has a lot to do with how people engage with your email. They get rid of it, they don't love what you have to say. They love it so little that they're throwing it out, okay? And, you know, if they open it, doesn't tell us a whole lot either. Let's look at some examples. Let's assume that half the people who get rid of your email, you lose them, right? They unsubscribe, they mark you as spam. They absolutely want nothing to do with you, right? So you're starting off in a really bad spot. You got a couple holes in your database. If we, on top of those people, look at the 60% of people who unsubscribe after reading an email because it just wasn't relevant, so we're talking about people that have opened it, have maybe scanned through it, didn't resonate with them, and they tossed it in the trash. You lose 60% of those people, it's another to your database. You break enough hearts, and after a while, you get a pretty bad reputation, right? The more unsubscribes and deletes that you get to your email, the harder it is for you to actually successfully deliver email to the people that actually want to hear from you. In fact, you don't just ruin your reputation, you risk the reputation of the email service providers and the IP addresses that you use to send those emails. Your overall deliverability is severely affected.
So,
there's this other option.
yeah. What if we make email people love? Then they could get emotionally engaged, is a kind of a term I like to use.
We love that.
And in fact, in our case, they became so emotionally engaged that they're sharing our content with lots of other people. So for us, email marketing has actually become a multiplier on the whole entire strategy.
Yeah. If people love your email the way they love Julie's, you can transform your database into a fan base.
Those are my actual fans, by the way.
Sure. We rounded them all up together. No. You want to use email to transform your marketing database into a fan base. Okay? And you can do that. It's going to sound a little familiar to some people in the room. If you start with the right goals, you send to the right people, and you sculpt the right message. I wonder,
Have we heard that before?
it smells a little bit like inbound marketing.
Very similar.
Sounds a little bit like inbound marketing.
Very close.
Must be inbound marketing, but with email.
Inbound email marketing.
So I think it's important to start with goals, right? In Julie's case, when we first tackled this big tool in her tool belt that was email,
I had to really rethink how I thought about conversions for us. Is that pretty normal?
yeah, I mean, we talked about all the different things that can happen when people engage with your email, right? But for some reason, and none of us are guilty of that, we only focus on one side of the story. How many people in this room are obsessed with open rates and click rates? I'm raising my hand, so I am guilty as charged.
Totally in.
Right, and I'm not saying that those maybe aren't good indicators, but what do they really tell us about the effectiveness of our email campaigns, right?
Yeah.
If instead,
If instead, I like to know that everything I'm doing as a marketer is going to support basically one of two goals. I don't know about y'all, but for us, everything has one of two goals. Either I'm growing my database, i.e. fan base, my community, or I'm growing the business, putting money in the pipeline, helping it get out the other end.
right,
So let's talk about what are some of the indicators that might tell me if I'm first growing my fan base. So for me, it's things like, are they sharing my content? I mean, that's pretty simple.
Yeah.
People are tweeting your stuff, that's a good one. Also, I like to look at, are they replying to me? I mean, I love the intimacy when somebody replies back and says, are you a real person? And I can reply back and say, yes, I am. What can I help you with? That's awesome. Or thirdly, are they forwarding my emails? That's a real win if they are.
and we can, I mean, HubSpot customers, raise your hand. Can we see this in HubSpot?
Yes, you can.
we can.
In fact, all of these indicators together make a pretty meaningful big picture. For us, email is really driven visits to our website, and you can see this very easily in the HubSpot tool. But most importantly for me, I like to look at net new leads, not just visits. So this is showing people who are in my existing database that actually went out and grabbed somebody else and brought them to my community by forwarding an email. That's way better than looking at click-through rates and open rates, don't y'all think?
It's a much more
This is good
meaningful
stuff.
indicator.
Yeah.
Raise your hand if you agree. I know we're all digesting lunch. It's okay. Don't take it personally, but it's got a little excitement in this room.
We do the wave.
So if we look at the second indicator, right, business generated.
Right, so that was, are we growing the community in the database? Now,
Yeah. Now we're looking at because this one's a little bit more nebulous, right? It's difficult to say, well, this email created this business opportunity or didn't. Or
Yeah.
is it?
it's a little bit hard for us too because our sales cycle is a little bit long. Luckily, as you know, I have a very tight connection with my sales team, so I talk to them a lot. But one of the biggest things you can do is actually take the time to connect your CRM, in my case it's Salesforce, to HubSpot. And if so, you can look at things like this and see exactly which email led to the chain of events that made somebody become a customer. Now you're starting to really get a sense. What do they like? What's really leading to business, not just clicks?
Because I think the big thing with any inbound marketing activity, email, blogging, offer creation, nurturing, if you know what you need out of it, if you know what the end goal is, you're not going to be disappointed, right? The idea is set up the right goals, make sure that you're always working towards them, and don't use the indicators to help you figure out where you are along the way, but don't get caught up in the indicators. Don't lose sight of the forest for the trees.
You know, another thing that occurred to me in the process was that my contact database, my database is an actual living thing. It needs love, it needs care and feeding, and sometimes it needs a little bit of kicking out the dead stuff.
Yep. So, you know, we look at the end goal, right? We want email marketing people love. Before we can think about the inbox, it really starts with taking stock of who you've got in your community right now. Because not all leads were created equal. Some of them may be at different parts of the sales process. You know, they could be subscribers, they could be leads, they could be opportunities, they could be customers, right? And a lot of times this feels overwhelming. You've got just a raw number of folks in your database and you're like, where do I get started? And I think it's really important to get started with the people that you've known the longest. Get to know the people in your database that are your customers. How are they behaving, right? What are they doing?
The only thing about that is some of the people who've been in my database for a long time, Amanda, I have a lot of info on them. I've had a lot of interactions with them. But I try to make my forms so simple lately that sometimes I'm lucky if I even have a phone number. How does that play in?
Well, the thing is, and I'm sure this comes as no surprise to the folks in this room, your HubSpot database has so much more information than you realize, right? You've got information about what pages people have viewed, what landing pages they filled out. You even know how they've engaged with your previous email communications. I mean, that's huge. Think about that for a second. Systems that previously were totally disparate, and you had to sort of figure out how you were going to make sense of it all lives in one place.
So what you're saying is we shouldn't only be looking at their traits, but we should also start looking at what are their behaviors. And you probably have a lot more information in your database than you realize if you'll look and think about what are their behaviors.
Right. You know, you may find along the way that potentially you're not asking the right questions. That's pretty easy to do, right? Think about the types of forms that you've got on your landing pages. But overall, you can start to slice and dice and get a sense of your database simply by leveraging the things you already have. I'm going to show you a couple of examples. If anything else, you should slice your database into these 3 basic lists. Okay? First list we're going to look at is unengaged leads. People that have opened your email, but they probably haven't clicked on it, and it's been a really long time since they've converted on something. You need to know who these people are. You got to separate them out, right? We've got to treat them differently.
Yeah, and you can make these lists real easily in HubSpot, guys. For example, we could do this one. We could say, anyone who's ever opened an email or opened at least one email, but they haven't clicked through any. So you'd say emails clicked less than 1. And they've converted never in the last 6 months. Now that's a pretty unengaged person. Boom, you got a list. Start thinking about how you communicate to those people. We'll get to that in the next section.
Well, and I think the key thing about this group is these are people who, they actually may not even be getting your email communications. When somebody is this unengaged, the likelihood that your email's even landing in their inbox is really low, right? So it may be to your benefit to email them less frequently. I know that sounds a little counterintuitive, but think about it. Somebody's bombarding you, and all of a sudden, you don't hear from them for a really long time, and one day you get an actual email, and you're like, oh, I wonder, I haven't seen this person forever. You're much more likely to elicit a response. But similarly, this is a group you want to keep an eye on, because the more this list grows, this is an indicator that as a marketer, something's not right, right? Mm-hmm. The next list that we look at is the complete opposite, right? So we've looked at the people that just not really that into us, but now we want to look at the people that are really engaged. And the cool thing about this is it differs company to company. You know, one flavor of this list, you can use people that have opened your emails, they've converted a ton, and they may be at some part of your sales funnel, right? They may be a little bit more mature along the process.
Yeah, so let's see how we build a list for that. So you could say emails clicked is greater than or equal to 3. So they've clicked on at least a few emails, but they've actually filled out more than 2 forms in the last couple of months. You can get real specific. So I think we'd all agree those are recently engaged people. They're expecting maybe something different out of you, I'd expect.
Right, and you can, we'll talk about how you can boost them a little bit, right? Later on in the process, you can identify these people early, and you can have that asset ready to react. The last group is a little bit different. You definitely want a group that's sort of demonstrated interest, right? But we want people that actually have a really big following. People that have the possibility and the potential to share something that they love with their audience.
And they like to.
And they like to, right? So we can leverage this to help us reach one of our business goals, growing our database, helping us attract more people.
So again, a list, you can actually build a list based on somebody in your database's follower count. So you could say follower counts greater than or equal to 800. They've opened at least an email, and they've converted sometime in the last 6 months. So they're familiar enough, they kind of know who we are, but they're looking for stuff to share.
Yeah.
If they have 800 followers.
Yeah. So I think like the key takeaway here is you got to use what you've got. What is the point of having this database if you're not going to use the data that we're collecting in it? Especially in a world where HubSpot's collecting a lot of this stuff behind the scenes and you don't even have to think about it.
Yeah, there's more than we realize in there.
Yeah. So I think the next piece, we've talked about setting the right goals for your email program. We've talked about taking stock of the people in your database. I think the key thing here is, I don't know if you're catching where we're going with this, is you got to treat each contact differently. So we got to remodel the content we build for them so that it's specific to their traits, to the way they engage with us.
So just real quick, so the lists we created were the unengaged,
the engaged, and the social influencers.
the chatty Cathys. We love them.
Yeah. So the one thing that's kind of important is once you've got stock of this, of people, the contacts, and you've adjusted the way that your message, engages them, it's important to also understand how, we're ahead of the curve as marketers. We're trying to take that information and, transition it into our email programs. But so too are email services providers adjusting the way that your prospects are engaging with your email and where it shows up in their inbox, right? So the more that people engage with your email, the higher priority inboxes place that email. Who here has Gmail as an ESP? Right? So you'll notice that Gmail launched maybe a couple months ago, priority inbox. This is how this stuff works. They actually look to see how the prospect, do they click, do they reply, do they forward, do they open and read it, do they toss it, do they unsubscribe, to predict how they're going to place that email in their inbox the next time around.
So if I'm sending them something and they delete it every time,
it's just
already inbox is going to start just like...
It's just going to get deprioritized. So it's important, whether you like it or not, that you adjust the way you message those contacts. So first thing you should do is take stock of the types of emails you're sending, how often you're sending those emails, and the types of topics that they include. So we did this with Julie. We did some little analysis of the types of emails.
I just do whatever she says, by the way. It's a good strategy. And what we did was wanting to give our unengaged users an option to decide how often they get communication from me and what kinds of communication. So to do that, just a real easy way to start was I thought about, I just had this pile of things I was sending them. Does that pile of things nicely just kind of fit into a few piles? And for me, it did. Just fit nicely.
And then, yeah. Go ahead. I was going to say, you love this next piece.
Yeah, and so, well, I don't know if I love it, but I did send them the breakup email. I mean, it's not you, it's me, I'm sure. So if it's not doing it for you, it's okay, unsubscribe. We're better off as marketers if they don't get our email, if they're not going to open it, if they're not going to engage with it in the long run. So very simple. Hey, cleaning out our database, notice you hadn't been engaged in a while. Please manage your preferences. or completely unsubscribe if this is not relevant to you. Now get on with being awesome. And you know, some unsubscribed, but then some people woke up and was like, wow.
Well, I think the key thing here is the worst thing that can happen to you as a marketer is spend your time crafting an email, sending it out, and it being something somebody doesn't want to receive. Sometimes not sending an email is the best way to show your database that you love and appreciate them.
Just marketing's kind of like dating.
It is. I don't know if you're catching that. It's kind of like dating.
Too much texting, you know, stage 5 clinger. It doesn't work. Right? Am I right? It's the same kind of thing.
So I think the next big piece is starting to put some of these processes into action. We've talked about how to deal with unengaged people. Let's look at now the folks that are really engaged with you, either on a small scale or a large scale, right? Because we know, again, where they are in the funnel. We know what forms they've filled out. We know what pages they've viewed. We know what topics they're interested in to a certain degree, right? All of that is in our contacts database. And you can take these larger lists that we've built out and even segment further to create a much more targeted community of people that are going to be much more receptive to that message. Let's look at an example.
So we're in the business of IT best practice consulting and training. So sometimes the people that are interested in consulting are very different than the people that are interested in training. As Amanda was talking about, sometimes you start whittling down to what subjects people want to hear about. So we were working to promote an upcoming training that we had, when of course pulled a list of people that I knew were interested in receiving training information, and we sent this email. I mean, clearly, marketing template email. Got the graphic, kind of playful.
Gorgeous call to action. I mean, nobody would look at this email and say...
It's trained by my consultant.
I mean, nobody would look at this email and say, oh, it's terrible. It's a very clean, simple, brief email. And it did pretty well.
Yeah, I mean, I think we probably sold some business. We did sell some business, actually, off that email. Yes.
But I think there was an opportunity, right?
Yes, because I got to thinking, I'm sure nobody in here gets too much email, right? I mean, there's days where on Monday, I'm like, are you kidding me? I just delete it, even though I'm sure I want to read it. The fact that I'll be able to is another story. So I thought about who are the people that maybe showed some interest. Maybe they even clicked that link, but some reason they didn't fill out the form. So I created a list that was everybody who clicked on that link. We started there. And then I went in and I said, okay, now I'm going to make a list using everyone who's a member of that list but did not complete the form associated with that landing page. So there's some people there. What happened to them? They probably went, a form, I'm not into it. I mean, sometimes.
Yeah.
Or the phone rang, or Skype went off, or
yeah, or they got
happened.
distracted, like life happens.
Right. The timing was just wrong. So we created an email. I think you're going to talk a little bit about how we made that.
Yeah, I mean, we tried to approach this email a little differently. We thought about maybe people just didn't respond to that overly templated approach. So what are some ways that we can easily grab someone's attention, make it real simple, make it feel really personal, right? So you'll notice that this email is from their account manager, someone they know, someone that if they saw an email in their inbox, it's not going to be like, why am I getting this? We made sure to personalize the subject line, to call attention to the fact that this has to do with your business, your company. And we kept the email super short and super clean. You want to see the finished product?
Yeah, in fact.
Well, even if you don't want to, I'm going to show it.
Sorry, you're in the session, you're going to see it. You see no graphics. It just looks like an email from Ryan, which I did work with Ryan. He knows this email went out. It wasn't, you know. And it says, hey, I see you checked out our page on this really cool content. If I can answer any questions for you specifically, feel free just to reply to me. I'll get you any timing, dates, prices of training. So some people are just more apt to reply back to Ryan than to fill out a form.
What did we learn from this email, Julie? Talk to me about the stats.
Well, the stats, I was going to say, that's two different things. But the stats, I think we sent about 250 emails on this one.
Yeah.
Ryan got about 15 direct replies. And we sold 3 training classes. For us, about $30,000 worth of business, which is not bad for an email.
Right.
We'll take it.
We'll take it. I think the moral of the story here is that when it comes to email, you don't necessarily need to dress to impress, right? This is not a situation where the better the template, the better the response. It's quite the opposite, in fact. And it was perfect for that subset of really engaged users because They've been engaged with you. They don't need the dog and pony show. Just give them the easy way to accomplish what they need to accomplish, right? Last example, so, you know, I'm the interim product manager for this little tool called Marketing Grader. You might have heard of it.
Woo!
And I think,
a tiny job.
You know, we recently launched an app version of the report. We're really excited about it. It's basically an opportunity for someone to log back in and see their progress over time. And I thought, okay, well, we could try, you know, the kickback email that everybody gets after they fill out a Marketing Grader report. We could try to promo that app to those people. They've got a lot of influence. So we've got this information we're collecting in our database. Let's use it. So I made sure to include their URL for the report that they ran in the subject line, personalizing that so it doesn't feel foreign, right? I included the grade in their email, and I asked them not only to create their own account, but to share this email, share their response, share their grade, you know, to a wider subset of people. And the thing here is that that is actually a good use of my time as a marketer, because that is a valuable email that somebody wants to receive, right? If I don't send an email that's worth someone's time with valuable information they care about, it was a waste of mine to send it, right? So I think the last thing that we'll talk about here is that we didn't just divine the right answer. How do we build content for the right types of audiences? And it's very likely that the things that worked for Julie and for myself, they may not be the things that work for your contacts, okay? So everybody here has probably heard A/B testing, right? One of the easiest ways to do that is to start by exporting one of those great lists we just spent time building and tackle, let's say, 10%. So let's say we got 10,000 people in one of those lists. Target the first 1,000, first 10%.
This is assuming you want to do a random divide.
And you can just build this in. Yeah, but build this into your process so you start to learn how your existing communications are resonating with that list. All right, so grab the first 10%, send them version A. Grab the second 10%, send them version B. I think you know where I'm going with this. The winner.
I can guess what the punchline.
What's the punchline? We send them
the
winning email
to the
rest of the database. Right? This is something that Julie has built into every email send process that she has, so that she learns with each and every send a little bit more about what works for her contacts. And I really encourage you guys to do the same.
How long do you like to give them? Like a few days?
I think we try to give them like a week, and then you send the winning version. So try to time that out, but try that out in your next email send.
Try it out.
I think the lesson learned here is that with email, as with love, experimentation keeps things fresh, right?
But there will be no demonstration of this particular portion of the event.
So I think if we've learned anything here today, start with the right goals. Right? Think about what is an indicator versus what a true conversion is. And make sure that any activity in your marketing process is working towards the end goal.
And for me, there's only two. Grow in the database or grow in the business.
Get to know the people that are in your database, right? This is a group that you need to nurture and develop and work with and learn from.
And take some people out of it every now and then. Don't be afraid to do that.
And finally, make sure that the content you're creating is appropriate for the different audiences in your email group.
Yeah, same thing doesn't work for everybody, right? So remember.
So you can rekindle the flame with email marketing that people love.
Are those the cutest kids ever?
Those are her kids.
Thank you. Actually, the one on the right's not, but I'll take credit. She's nice. I think we have a little time for some questions. Can I do some questions?
Yeah,
Should we do questions? Can we do questions?
If you guys have any questions,
if you have questions, we can do questions. We have a mic.
Questions.
If you don't have questions, you just want to bail, that's cool too. Questions. What's our experience with that? Well, I don't know if I have a best practice. I have some experience with that. So Andy Lewis's question is, what keeps people from giving me bogus email addresses? Okay, well, great content, I think is the bottom line answer to that. But what's so great about the HubSpot tool also is if Andy Lewis at Chevron.com is in there, it figures out sometimes this is the same dude.
I think there's two ways you can handle this. The first way is that you can send a variation of that breakup email that's like manage your email preferences, or you can include a footer in every one of your email communications. It's like make sure that you're receiving email the way that you want, because that subscription type screen that I showed, that allows your prospects the opportunity to switch their email addresses as well. And it syncs it right into the contacts database.
So if somebody really doesn't want that email from me, I don't want to send it to them anyway. I'm kind of okay with that.
Yeah. Yeah? Mm-hmm. Yeah, it'll just switch their address. Mm-hmm. Yeah, good. I think one of the things...
repeat the question.
Yeah, oh, sorry. So what's your name, sir? Mike's question is, what's better, HTML or rich text email? I think most email, you have to think about the types of clients that people are receiving their emails in. A lot of it is phone, a lot of it are web-based webmail programs, and you got to think about what's best for that client. I think it depends on what you're sending. Like if you're sending, like some people send like a newsletter, or some people send, like if they're sending a pretty targeted email, I would always recommend testing your email sends, because that answer will vary depending on the types of emails that you're sending.
And I will say, I was a Constant Contact user before I started using the HubSpot email tool. And so what I think of the old newsletters I used to send that had 70 images, and I was trying to send more. HTML-based. This message of less is better. One call to action in an email, one image, maybe a logo. If my content that's short and brief and call to action is clear enough, they'll click download images. But you got to be careful about that, because the HTML-based emails will sometimes people's ESPs will block those out. Mm-hmm. But it's important to test your sends before you send them. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Be a good AB for your database.
Any other questions?
What else? Got a gentleman over here. Love them.
Yes?
Well, I wish we had screenshots. Any of my emails are always signed with, and if I can do something genuine that comes out of my mouth at that moment, if I can help you in any way, please reply directly to this email, or just call me and I put my phone number. And people do.
Yeah.
And then all my my emails that go through that workflow or the lead nurturing campaign are ended the same way too.
I'll actually add one more thing, which is to ensure that you're encouraging replies, make sure, I don't know if you noticed, make sure your emails are coming from a real person. The HubSpot email tool makes it super easy to customize the sender of the email as well as the sender's reply to email, so you ensure it gets into that person's inbox. So for all the marketing grade or kickback emails that get sent out, I automatically receive those replies, and I just respond to them on a one-by-one basis. Does that answer your question? Cool. Any other questions?
Are you back there?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
So you talked about A/B testing. So tell me, I have graphic design firm. So are you talking about A/B testing, stripping down that message, making it just text without all the
So what might be different ways you would A/B test?
So there's a couple different things that you should think about conceptually with your emails in terms of groups of testing. You may want to test the format of your email, which is the first example that we showed, which is more of a marketing templated email versus a super plain text email. You may want to test a call to action in an email. You may want to test, so more of like the content within the email. So that's kind of that's the other piece. Like Julie's tested a lot with how does she present certain content, experimenting with longer, a little bit more descriptive versus shorter and more actionable. And then you can test things like
Subject lines, my favorite to test.
Subject lines are the best things to test, like sort of the meta pieces of the email, like the subject lines, who they're from, and things of that nature.
Like my database, for some reason, hates the word free. I put free in a subject line, they're like, bleh.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So hopefully that helps. So you can start by testing either the format of the email, you can test the content and like sort of the distribution of the email, or you can test things like subject lines, who the email is from, what calls to action you have in there, et cetera.
Yeah, or the text, you know, images, no images.
Great question.
I haven't used the HubSpot tool yet, but is it possible to do that automatically? Can you just say, take 10% of my database and send this subject, take the other 10% and send that subject?
Not yet, but right, it's so easy to just export the, like right now, it's not automatic, but you can simply do it just by exporting. And that should be available soon.
Inbound 13.
Yeah.
I see a lady way in the very back. I love that. How's the back row back there? Really nice. Quick exit. The restrooms are down and to the left. Okay. I did this one. So is your question, hey, we gathered contacts at a conference. How should we start to approach them? What would be a good? I just did this one. I had the same issue. And I basically sent them an email that was kind of like the breakup email, but it was, hey,
we met.
We recently met. You know, we met you somewhere. We think you're cool. We want to do business with you. You know, something that's your personality of your company. You know, here's give them a sample of the type of content we share from time to time. Please manage your preferences. If you'd love to stay on our list, we'd love to build a relationship with you and get you access to more free content. If not, you know, it's okay.
I think the key thing with any email, whether it's a trade show, whether it's organically generated, you have to help the recipient understand why they're receiving the email and how you know them and what the goal of that email is. Like, so I always say with Jules, I say the so what and the now what. So what? Why am I receiving this email? Who are you and how do you know me? And the now what? Okay, what do you want from me? And so if you make that really clear in the email, it's a lot likelier to go the way you want it to go. There was a question right over here. Well, so the templates within HubSpot, there's a bunch of different types of templates, but all of them automatically include, at the very bottom of the email, they include that manage your preferences or unsubscribe here. And it's pretty simple to just add the link for managing the preferences into the body of the email.
She could get that from her consultant?
Yeah, so you can, like, support can help you with that, your consultant. It's pretty straightforward.
So it's already in the template, but if you'd also like to revert to it in the content of your email, get that from support.
Super easy.
It's just a link.
Yeah, so all the examples that we showed today are all from the HubSpot tool. Like if you want to leverage the information in your contacts database and make your emails, you know, what we call database driven, that's all through HubSpot.
Yeah, that's a valid point. We didn't hit much on that. So you create your emails in HubSpot, but then you also, a part of creating that email is telling the system who to send it to.
Right.
And so you create lists in the list area, and then when you get to the email, you say, send it to this list, or who did this activity within the last 7 days. So there's a series of things that happen, that connects together.
Yeah, it's all within the tool.
Does that make sense? The list, the contacts.
Yeah.
Can you import contacts into HubSpot? Does anybody know the answer? Yes.
The answer is yes. So what I was explaining before is because that's not baked into the tool, and this was an advanced session, so I thought I'd show you some of the stuff that we've been doing. She just exports one of those really segmented out lists and then just randomly selects like the first 10%. So if the list is 10,000, she'll pick the first 1,000 and then she'll grab the next 1,000 and then import them in as like A and B, re-import them in. And it's like the new, I don't know if anyone here has been with the legacy email tool, but the importer is like amazing now. It takes like no time.
Oh, it's not even hard at all. It's so quick.
Yeah.
I've been using Constant Contact for email, but I'd like to switch to the HubSpot emailer. And I know a question from my management will be that they're concerned about losing addresses. Like IPs are already accepting all of our newsletters because we've been using Constant Contact. So they're afraid if we switch that we're going to lose, that people aren't going to get our emails. And since you had Constant Contact and you switched, I was wondering if you found that.
Well, when I was on Constant Contact, I had no idea what was working and what wasn't. I was still measuring click-through rates and open rates.
Well, I think, so I worked with Julie in this transition. So there's two parts that you can't just like import all your contacts into any ESP and just start emailing them. You kind of have to build up your credibility on that ESP. So I think is helpful is to start maybe by pulling the more engaged people, the people that just have that visual recognition with you, and maybe start by sending a couple of cents to that contingent so that you build that relationship and you start to build positive mojo on the HubSpot ESP.
That's good.
And then start bringing over the rest of the people so that it's more of like a weaning off of the old system and a ramping up of the new one, and less of a like we stop and we spray and pray. Don't do that.
Do a blur instead of a switch. Yeah.
Any other questions?
I think we're at time anyway. One more?
One last one.
How does HubSpot manage with unsubscribes? So say you're putting less on proprietary server and just going to talk back to HubSpot. If you import the non-HubSpot automatically
Yep, so there's two pieces to the HubSpot import process.
Could y'all hear the question?
Yeah, so her question was, how does HubSpot manage unsubscribes and how does HubSpot manage duplicates? So there's two pieces. HubSpot, when you import a list into HubSpot, will automatically deduplicate any duplicate email addresses into one record. And the second piece is that there is a separate part of HubSpot where you can, when you import, you just check a different box that says, all these people are unsubscribed. So if you're manually toggling between like your proprietary system and HubSpot, you can regularly update your unsubscribes into HubSpot, and similarly, you can easily export your unsubscribes from HubSpot and import them into your proprietary system.
Good question.
Cool. Thank you so much
Thanks,
for being
guys.
such a great audience.
Good luck.
Have a great day.